We're live at Sifta for Coffee and Kabbalah on Chanukah. Today is the 6th day of Chanukah. I'm going to spin around and we're going to see what we have here. We have our menorah lit. We had Papa Melech donuts. We have gorgeous rain. We have the best coffee in Israel together with the best donuts in Israel from Papa Melech, the best coffee from Sifta, and the most amazing neshamas of women. Today's class is generously sponsored by my dear friend Pam Ertfarb and Minna Strick. Thank you so much for your patronism. Patronism, not patriotism.
No,
patronage. Okay, so I'm really excited about today's class. I think that I'm going to do today's class on the psychology of the Chanukah candles, on the psychology of the Chanukah candles. Because I was going to do a new cheer, but I see that I don't think many of you have heard this one yet, and it's very, very life-changing. Okay, so these hurt. They're going to go over here. This was an attempt to be coolest Rebbetzin. Earrings.
You already smoked that.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so now let's do the shear. Okay, so here is, you have sources. In your sources, we're going to learn, guys, get this. You're learning a Braita. You're all going to be Talmidei Chachamas. We're learning Gemara Shabbos, Maseches Shabbos, right? Maseches Shabbos, the Gemara. This is talking about the Gemara. The sages in the Gemara speak about how we like the menorah. אפשר לכבות את המוזיקה בבקשה? לשיעור? תודה. Tanu Rabbanan. It says in the Brisa, Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah, Mitzvahs Chanukah, Ner Ish Ubeito. At the mitzvah of Chanukah is one candle for one person of the house. The basic mitzvah of Chanukah is that each household, one person lights one candle each night. That's the basic. So if you don't have a menorah, you're good. One person in the house lights a menorah. But mahadrin, if you want to be then ner l'kol echad. Each person lights one candle. Each person in the house lights one candle each night. Mahadrin, mina mahadrin. What's the best to do the mitzvah? There's two schools of thought. So the Gemara continues. Beis Shammai Imrim, the house of Shammai holds Yom Rishon Madlik Shmona. The first day you light 8 candles. Mikan ve'elech, from here on out, poches v'holech. From here on out, you subtract one every single day until the last day you have one candle, right? We all know, some of us might know this. Beis Hillel Imrim, Beis Hillel says, Yom Rishon Madlik Echas. The first day, you light one candle. Mikan ve'elech mosav holech. And here you add one every single day until you have 8 on the last day. Now, we know that this is the way that we do it. We are mahadrin, mina mahadrin. Let me just put it on do not disturb. Okay. We are mahadrin, mina mahadrin. The best way, we go according to Beis Hillel. Now, the Gemara then continues and says, what is the logical reasoning? The psychology. Where do they base this on? Why would Shammai say start with 8 and lower, and Hillel say go 1 and increase? So you can hear me? Amar Ula. Ula says, Plige. So the Tanaim in the Gemara, we have the Tanaim who are in the times of the Mishnah, and then we have the Amoraim who are in the Talmud, the times of the Talmud, who discuss what the Mishnah talks about. So the Amoraim, now the next generation of scholars, are now trying to figure out what Hillel and Shammai were basing it on. So these two Amoraim. Amar Ula. Ula says. A plige is when there's a disagreement, but Trei Amoraim Marava. 2 Amoraim in the West disputed on the source, on the reasoning behind Hillel and Shammai's conclusions, how they got to their conclusion. Rabbi Yossi bar Abin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida, 2 Rabbi Yossis. Chad Amar, one of them said, this is the reason for Hillel and Shammai. Tama de Beis Shammai keneged yamim hanichnasin. It's going to get deep, guys, so just hold with me. That Beis Shammai's reasoning is how many days are left. So Beis Shammai is saying, light 8 the first day, because the greatest miracle, the potential for the greatest miracle is on the first day. On the first day, that oil had this miraculous potential to light for 8 days. After 7 days, the miracle got less and less and less. So you do for how many days are left. So the first day, there's 8 days left. The next day, there's 7 days left, so you light 7 candles, right? But Talmud Beis Hillel, he says, and Hillel's reasoning is because how many days passed? 1 day passed, we light 1 candle. 2 days passed, we light 1 candle. So they disagree on where you light on. The other Amora says, no, that's not why they're based on. This is what they're based reason on. The Chad Amar, Tamad Beis Shammai, the reason Beis Shammai says is Keneged Parei HaChag, is Keneged, they're parallel to the bulls of the Chag, which is Sukkot. But on Sukkot, we brought 8 bulls on the first day, 7 bulls on the next day, then 6 bulls. And just like that, Shammai said, let's learn from Sukkot. They brought 8 bulls on the first day, and let's do that the same thing with the menorah for this other holiday of 8 days, right? And then he says, and what is Hillel basing it on? So why doesn't Hillel agree with that? He says that Talmud Beis Hillel, this Amora says, Demailin b'kodesh ve'emarita, that in things of Kedusha, you only increase, you don't subtract. And Hanukkah is something holy. And that's our reason. So whenever we quote in Chabad, we always quote Hillel, Mailin b'kodesh. The Rebbe would always expect you. You're doing till now. You did this much. Add. You have to increase in kedusha. Do more than you did yesterday. Oh my gosh, the rain is coming through, guys. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I'm in the special spot. Hi, Adina. Welcome. Oh my gosh, we saved you a donut. Okay, now we're going to get deeper. We're going to try to understand the crazy deep messages that we learn from Hillel and Shammai in our working through darkness. Because I'm going to give you a little bit of background. If you were at the Menorah Margaritas, raise your hand. You heard this, right? Everyone else, I'm going to give you a bit of background. So to understand this, Chassidut says, what is Hanukkah all about? Then we'll understand how their Hillel and Shammai's differences are. We're going to get to it. So the essence of Hanukkah, according to Chassidut, is turn the page to Al Anisim. According to Chassidut, if you could eclipse and summarize Hanukkah into one message, it is the battle of light winning over darkness. Even though the biggest miracle of the time, when they won the miracle at the time, the biggest miracle was that they weren't crushed to death and annihilated to death by armies and armies of Romans or Greeks, and instead they won with their tiny little Hashmonaim family, right? Their Maccabee family. So that was the big miracle of the time. But that's not actually what the Chachamim choose to celebrate. In fact, when you look in the Gemara elsewhere where it says, Mai Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? It actually doesn't even mention once the miracle of the Maccabees winning over this giant Greek army. All it says is that they found a little shemen, and it was a site, and Hashem made it burn 8 days and night. By the way, can I be ADHD for a minute and just sing the song that nobody knows? Do you guys it goes on T Yachos. Do you guys know this? The wicked. Okay, fine. I'm like, did I make it up? He did to the Jews a terrible thing. He made the holy base of Mikdash unclean. And besides, he was so mean. That's not fair, the Maccabees did say. With Hashem's help, we will chase Antiochus away. They found a little shemen, it was a sight, and Hashem made it burn 8 days and night. Okay, that's what we grew up with. Right? We all grew up. Okay, fine. I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. Comment if you know this song, because I was singing and everyone's like, I've been a Genenet for years. I didn't know it.
I didn't see that one. I'm saying I'd like to be Maccabee.
I wouldn't be. Okay, so the Gemara actually only comments on the fact that they found oil and there was enough to last. It was a miracle that they found the oil because the Greeks defiled and impurified, took the seal off of every oil, and then it was enough to last for 8 days. But what's unusual about that, and that's what we base the miracle on, the base of Hanukkah on, the main mitzvah of Hanukkah is what, or the only mitzvah of Hanukkah is what?
Lighting candles.
Lighting the menorah, right? To commemorate the miracle of the oil. Now, what's unusual about that is that the miracle of the oil wasn't as important as the miracle of winning the war, because we learned from that if there's a halacha called, I forget what it's called in English, but it's the halacha of rov, if most of the community is impure, you're allowed to light the menorah with impure oil. So in that time, because of the situation and because most of the people then were impure, they were actually allowed to light the menorah with impure oil. And contrary to a lot of people think that like the Greeks smashed all the oil, they didn't smash the oil. There was tons of oil. They just took the seal off. They just systematically took the seal off to make it impure, the oil. And so they could have actually lit the menorah with impure oil. They didn't even need that miracle. But if they didn't survive the Greeks trying to annihilate them, they wouldn't have been anyone to light the oil. That was the greater miracle at that time. The oil lasting for 8 days was a miracle, but it wasn't as necessary as the other one. But what they established on, what they kavod, says, how did the Chachamim decide to celebrate Hanukkah? Through the lighting of the menorah, to celebrate the miracle of the oil lasting, right? We light the miracle of oil, and by eating oily foods to commemorate the oil of Hanukkah, right, full of oil. Now, so we have a few questions I'm going to present, and then we're going to answer everything. I promise. I'll do my best. I promise I'll do my best. Okay, so let's get through a few questions together. One is that we do very little to commemorate the seemingly greater miracle of winning the war, and we mostly focus on the smaller miracle, which wasn't even necessary. Two was that another question is that why did the Greeks, the Gemara tells us that the Greeks intentionally destroyed the oil. What was their purpose in that? Why would they not just... Next one is that we're commemorating the menorah in the base of Mikdash. And how many branches were on the menorah in the base of Mikdash? 7. So why don't we have a menorah that reflects the same menorah as the base of Mikdash? Even another question, so that's question number 3. Question 4 is that if we're to commemorate lighting the base of Mikdash, we learned in the Torah that the base of Mikdash menorah had to be lit twice a day, both before dark, once in the morning. Some opinions say once a day, and those opinions also hold that it was in the afternoon before dark. And if it was twice a day, it was once in the morning and once in the afternoon before mincha, before it got dark outside. But we do the opposite. We light the menorah specifically when it's dark. But if we're trying to commemorate the menorah in the Beis Mikdash, wouldn't we want to do it around the same time, according to the halacha that it had to be done in the Beis Mikdash? So that's question number. Why do we light it specifically at night when the Beis Mikdash and the menorah was lit specifically during the day? And the miracle, the other question that has a lot of answers, is that the miracle of the oil was really just 7 days, because the first day wasn't a miracle. The oil should light for 1 day. The miracle of the oil burning was only 7 days. So why do we not only light the candle for 7 days? Why 8 days? There's 100 answers given for that, right? And even in the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch brings down the 3 famous answers. You guys help me out. What do you guys know? What would you guys think? So I think he brings down the 3 famous answers: that the first night we're commemorating either the winning of the war, B, the fact that they found oil when the Greeks made sure to defile everything, and C, that the potential, even on the first day, the oil was miraculous oil, that it had the potential then to burn for 8 days. So let me get rid of that annoying sound. So now we're going to look into Al Nisim, and through Al Nisim we're going to discover what Chassidus says is the core message of all of Chanukah. And then we're going to answer everything through that. So the core message of Chanukah, and let's read Al Nisim. Source number 5. Alhan Nisim Biala Forkan Biala Kurot Biala Chua Biala Milchamot She'asita Lavotenu Bayamim Ha'im B'Zman Hazeh. And then we say that on Chanukah and Purim. And on Chanukah we say Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol Chashmonai. In the times of Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan, the Kohen Gadol, the Hasmonean family and his sons, Kish'amdu Malchus Yavin of Rasha Al Yisrael, when the nation, the Malchus, the kingdom of Yavin Rasha, of the evil Greeks, stood over Amcha, over your nation Yisrael, these are the words I underlined: Lahashkicham, to make them forget Torah Techa, to make them forget Torah, but not just Torah. Torah Secha, to make us forget that it's Hashem's Torah. And then the next word, lahaviram, to move us away, michuke ritzonecha, not from Hashem's mitzvos, but specifically from the chukim ritzonecha, that are from your ratzon. And we learned that we have we always have enemies. Jews, we always have an enemy. We have an enemy now, and our enemies can be divided into 2 categories. There's enemies that want to kill us, whether or not we're religious. We're enemies that want to kill us for our bodies. We have physical enemies like Hamas, who don't care if you're religious, not religious. They just want to kill us because we're Jewish. They hate us. And like Hitler, whether or not you're religious or practicing didn't matter. And then we have enemies that actually don't want to kill our bodies. They want to kill our soul. What they're fighting against is not the Jewish body, but it's the Jewish soul, the Jewish spirit. And the greatest example of that is the Greeks. The Greeks, when Alexander the Great entered into Jerusalem, he was not an enemy of the Jewish people. He actually was so in love with the Jewish people and enamored by our culture, by the beauty of our customs and traditions and our Beis HaMikdash and the wisdom of the Torah. He said, I want a part of this. I want us to unite. I want us to assimilate. I want to unite I want to learn from this. And he did his best to assimilate with us. And not only that, they loved the mitzvos, the culture, Shabbos, the Beis HaMikdash. They loved all of it. They said, no, we don't want to. Not only do we not want to kill you for being Jews, we love you. We want to assimilate with you. We don't even want you to stop keeping Torah mitzvos. What they had a problem with was the aspect of Judaism that's Kedusha, the part that we can't see. The Greeks served everything that you could see: physical, the body, things that are beautiful, the external beauty. But the internal, the soul of Judaism, this godly spark inside every Jew, the idea that there's Kedusha, that there's Tuma, that there's Tara, the things you can't see, the fact that there's a Torah, that is great. But we say that the Torah is from God, that God, we're keeping the Torah because Hashem gave it to us, and for reasons we can't understand, for illogical reasons, that they battled with. They said, great, learn Torah, keep Shabbos, but come to this whatever game they were doing in their amphitheaters, and then keep Shabbos a few hours later. And the illogical hold we had to keep Shabbos on Hashem's terms, because Hashem told us that's not because it's beautiful. We don't keep Shabbos because it's a beautiful day of rest. We keep Shabbos. The reason Shabbos works is because something way greater than us, that there's an element that's way greater than than logic, than nature, that's dictating it to us, and we connect to something much greater, even the logical mitzvos. So when we say Lashkicha miTorah Secha, they said learn Torah, but learn it as a brilliant book that somebody wrote. Don't tell me that you're keeping it because it's godly, it's divine, everything it is Kodesh said God, that makes no sense. It's illogical. Then when you keep the Torah because it's from Hashem, then we're committed to it no matter what, even when it's hard, even when there's a game, even when there's something else physical pulling us, we keep it no matter what. They said keep the Torah, but not because it's divine. Take the Kedusha out of it. That's why they defiled, they defiled the oil. They specifically touched the sealed oil. They say light the menorah, but stop saying that only if it's sealed because it's pure oil. That's crazy. They said light the menorah, do exactly what you do, but let me just take away that you guys are meshuggah now because this oil is pure. You're going to believe that. You think that the thing that they battled the most against, they made decrees. They did make decrees against Jewish people keeping mitzvahs because we learned that, right? The Jews had to hide. What they made decrees against were against the things of Tuman Tahara, the things that were illogical. And that's the next words in Alanisim. They said, keep the mitzvahs, but don't keep the chukim, because the chukim are that there's three types of mitzvahs, three categories of mitzvahs. There's mitzvahs that are logical, mishpatim, don't kill, don't steal. They're like, yeah, be moral. Right? Then there's mitzvahs that are edus, that are cultural mitzvahs. Shabbos, Chagim, all those beautiful celebrations you do those mitzvahs. Then there's chukim, there's the illogical mitzvahs. Shatnez, kashrus, and especially Tuman Tahara, bris milah. Those are things that make no sense. They're not cultural and they're not logical. So you guys have to cut yourself off. So they kept a decree against keeping Shabbos. Don't keep Shabbos because Hashem said, keep a day of rest on Sunday. Do it Sunday. But on the Sabbath, you cannot keep Shabbos. Do it a different day of the week. Don't be so connected to what God said, to the message of God. You can't do bris milah. That makes no sense. Tuman Tahara, things like mikvah, are the most illogical mitzvahs because they're telling me that that a minute before I go into these waters, I'm impure. Then I go into these waters and now I'm pure, right? That this vessel is impure, but it goes into these waters that God said it's the most godly mitzvahs. That's what they fought against. So when we say chukim, they said they wanted us to stop keeping the chukim, and not only chukim, but they wanted us to stop keeping all of the mitzvahs. We're told that we're supposed to keep not just the chukim because they're from illogical reasons, because they're from Hashem. We're supposed to keep all the mitzvahs because we keep the mitzvahs because Hashem told us to. And that is why, and if we don't, and the reason, why does it matter, you might ask? Okay, so I'm not going to steal because it makes sense not to steal. Who cares if I keep it because Hashem told me not to steal? Or because I know it's not good to steal. Because there's times when our logic can lead us to think that now is a good time to steal. Now I'm more poor than that. Steal. It's okay to kill them because they're bad or they deserve it. We don't get okay to steal. It's okay to kill them because they're bad or they deserve it. We don't get to lose logic. There's times when our logic can lead us astray. We don't get to do mitzvahs because we don't do mitzvahs because our logic told it makes sense. Even if it makes sense, we do it because Hashem told us. Because sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes there's times when doing a mitzvah doesn't make sense. Even the ones that do make sense don't make sense, right? So then we keep it because Hashem told us to. So we keep all the mitzvahs because they're chukim. That's what because of the kedusha. And so their battle. Let me just summarize now. The Greeks' battle was against the divinity in the Torah and the mitzvahs, the godliness, the kedusha aspect of the Torah and mitzvahs. They weren't fighting our bodies. They were fighting the soul, the part of us, the part of Torah mitzvahs that you can't see. The things that we are a nation of not of seeing. We're a nation. What do we say every night, every day, 3 times a day? Shema Yisrael. The most things in life are not things you can see, are not physical things. They're things that are way beyond seeing. The most important things, the most real things in the world are things that were said, that Hashem said, that we could hear. We can move away the coarseness of our sight and go deeper. We can hear the messages beyond what we see. We could hear what we see face to face. We might see somebody yelling at us, but if we listen deeper, we're going to see a person who's hurt, a person who's in pain, a person who needs a hug, a person who needs warmth. When we just look with our eyes, we're led astray by what we see. But when we go to listen deeper with our ears, with our soul, with what's deeper, the messages we hear are much, much deeper than what we see. And that is what they were fighting against. And that is what the core of Chanukah is. So because that's what the Greeks were fighting against, they were fighting to annihilate and destroy the soul of Judaism. And eventually it led to a full-out war where they were trying to kill us because we refused to give in. They said the only way they knew how to win us, they said, if you don't give up your mitzvahs, the bris milah and all the mitzvahs that we can't see, we're going to kill you. And they started to kill people and hang them for and hurt people and send them away. We have kids here for keeping mitzvahs, for keeping mitzvahs that are chukim. And so when they started doing that, that's when it came to an all-out battle, and that's when the battle came. But the battle wasn't a physical battle; it was a spiritual battle. Even the physical battle between the Maccabees and the Greeks was a spiritual battle. It was a battle to hold on to the kedusha aspect, to the Torah secha and chukei ritzonecha. Right. So that is what, if we celebrate now, what did we win on Chanukah? What we won when we won the war, what we essentially won, the battle that we won was the battle of kedusha over tuma, over mundane, over the vain, the things that and so let me, in the words of Al-Nis, if we continue, V'ata b'rachamecha rabim, amadata lehem be'etzaratam, you with your mercy, we stood with us against our enemies. Ravta esrivam, you fought our battles. Danta Zinam, you judged our judgments. Akamtas Bikmasam, you avenged our vengeance. Masarta Kiborim Biyat Chalashem, you gave mighty in the hands of weak. Rabim, many in the hands of little. Rabim Biyat Matim, Utmeim Biyat Toran, and Tame Tuma in the hands of Tahora. And I forget the rest because I cut out. So what we're celebrating is the victory. If we could now we're going to summarize the victory of Chanukah in its essence is the victory of light over darkness. at the end of the day, the light, the Kedusha prevailed over the darkness of what they wanted to bring to us, of what they were trying to bring us down. The Kedusha prevailed. Not only the Kedusha prevailed, but if we go into Hasidic numbers, the number 8 is what prevailed, because what they were fighting against was the element of the illogical. They said, keep everything because it makes sense. 7 is the number of logic. 7 is the number of nature. Hashem made the world in building blocks of 7. Hashem created nature through 7 days of creation, which are the 7 spheros, and everything in nature comes in the patterns of 7. And they were saying, keep everything because it's natural. And we said, no, we're going to keep the mitzvahs because of the 8th dimension, because of the illogical, supernatural, super conscious, this soul-like 8th dimension that you cannot see, that's not in nature. Because nature, they said nature is great, everything works in nature, but nature created itself. They said, yes, there's 7 patterns in nature, but there's an 8th dimension that creates all of this nature. And they ignored that. The Greeks fought against it. They said, no, nature is the end all. And they said, no, there's an 8th above this that's making all this happen. Who do you think is bringing all the 7 integration? There's an 8th dimension. That's what we're connecting to. We're keeping Torah mitzvahs because there's something even greater than us that commanded us to. There's a being and there's a part of our soul. There's something that's even greater than nature. We are above nature. Our existence is above nature. The fact that the Jews are still around here, and we prove that through every aspect of Hanukkah, from the fact that we won the war, small against many, proved our existence is supernatural, that our whole existence is connected to the level of 8, that the whole miracle is the level of 8, the supernatural, the illogical, the Kedusha, prevailing over the logical, over the 7. And that is why Hanukkah is all about the number 8. That's why we keep the menorah, we keep Hanukkah for 8 days. The deepest, one of the Hasidic reasons why we keep, in addition to all the other reasons, Hanukkah is 8 days because what we're celebrating is the miracle of the 8 triumphing. There's even a song about it by Matisyahu about the 8. 8 is a number of infinity. Right, by the way, even the 8, when you move it sideways, it's an infinite number. It's a connection to infinity, right? You know the Matisyahu song, 8 is a number of infinity, one more than what we know how to be, right? And this is festivity, right? So that is what Hanukkah is all about. The 8, the infinite 8. The infinite 8 triumphing over the 7. The light triumphing over the darkness. That is why we keep Hanukkah for 8 days. That is why our menorah has 8 branches, even though the menorah in the Beis Mikdash had only 7 branches, right? Because we are celebrating the miracle of the 8 triumphing, the 8, the supernatural, the infinite. Connection. I like the word infinite. Thanks, Matisyahu. Our connection to the infinite soul and the infinite God. And the reason that we light the menorah in the dark and at night, even though they live in the Beis Mikdash during the day, is because we're not just commemorating that they live in the menorah in the Beis Mikdash. We're commemorating and we're celebrating light overpowering darkness. So how can we do that if we light the menorah during the day? We only light the menorah when it's dark outside to show that light, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how great the darkness is. Our enemies were way larger than us in number and in power. But that doesn't matter because light always prevails over darkness. This theme has been on social media, but people are not even religious. I see my not religious friends sending Hanukkah pictures and write light overpower. A little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness, which is like a quote from Shlomo Melech, that like it just pervaded the essence because we see it in this year more than ever that we see that there's an influx of darkness from anti-Semitism, from the numbers. The numbers of anti-Semites are way larger than us, but it doesn't matter because to quash darkness, you don't have to battle darkness one at a time. And this is where we're going to get to Hillel and Shammai in a moment. We just have to add 1 candle. To banish a room full of darkness, it's not proportionate. The battle of light and dark is not proportionate. That's why it says Hashem gives many in the hands of few. Because with light, it's infinite. Light comes from the infinity. So when you have infinity battling the finite darkness, you don't need to have an equal amount. You don't need to have an equal battle to win. It's not like it's not like an arm wrestle, right? This is much, much greater than that. So when we're battling with infinity, when we're using light to battle darkness, we have to remember that 1 candle banishes a whole room full of darkness. We actually had that at the menorah lighting right here, that giant menorah in Siftach. When the lights, for 2 days, those string lights weren't working. And it was really dark. And as soon as Roe Weiser's parents, Yami and Naomi Weiser, lit the menorah, suddenly there was like light. Suddenly the whole place was illuminated from 1 menorah. And there was hundreds to thousands of people, so 1,000 people there. So it was like that moment of light overpowering darkness was a very, very deep moment. And seeing how 1 menorah can light up a huge area of darkness and just allow everyone to see suddenly, and it clarifies everything. And so I've said this message time and again, and I'm going to say it again. The way we battle darkness on social media and anti-Semitism, I've told this to you, Daniela, right, is that we don't need to start answering the darkness. We don't need to start fighting with the darkness and answering the darkness, because we are by doing more things to increase in light. Battling the darkness, and what we're going to get to in Hillel and Shammai in a moment. So we're going to summarize everything. We have a few questions about the 7 branches of the menorah, the 7 days of Hanukkah, why we light during the dark at night when the menorah is lit during the day. We have questions about Hillel and Shammai. What other questions do we have? Oh, about why our main question was why the Chachamim commemorate, seemingly only talk about the miracle of the oil, of finding the oil and lasting for 8 days, and not the the bigger miracle, which was that they won the war. And the reason for that is, based on what we're saying, is that the true miracle of Hanukkah was not the physical battle was really a battle of spirituality. It's a battle of spirituality over darkness, of light battling darkness. So the Chachamim chose to focus on and commemorate that with is lighting the menorah. The core mitzvah of Hanukkah is taking a menorah and taking a small flame and lighting it in the darkness to show the triumph of light over darkness. That we have one in the past. That Hanukkah is not just a historical event that happened one time. Hanukkah is a recurring event that happens every single year and every single day. That light continues to and will continue to prevail over darkness, no matter how great they are in number. It started with Adam and Chava. I have a video that I didn't put out yet about Adam and Chava celebrating Hanukkah before they knew about the miracle in their own way. It's a cliffhanger for next year. No, maybe I'll put it out tomorrow for the last day. So that is why the Chachamim focus on the candle, on oil lasting for 8 days, because the message, the deepest message of Hanukkah is that the message of the flame, of the eternal flame, and finding that jug of oil was finding that spark of infinity inside every human being. It was representation. It's a message. When we say that they found a little shemen, when there was nothing left, when they defiled it. Oh, the other question was why they took the seal off, right? Because they didn't care if you lit the menorah. They just wanted to purify it. And the miracle was that no matter how, even if the entire world, every Greek soldier, every single person is trying to take away our flame and take away our spirit and systematically destroy Jews, right? In every way possible, it's not possible. They cannot, there's always going to be a jug of oil left. They cannot get rid of that. It is like this jug of oil that's infinite and that's indestructible. And it's in every single Jewish person, every single human being has this flame, has a piece of Kedusha inside of them, has oil, which I just learned in Chassidus this morning, that that oil includes in it the potential for the flame. Like that's in the oil itself to begin with, it has the potential of the flame in the oil. And when you attach it to a wick and light it, then that potential comes out of the oil. But the oil has the potential for that white light. And it's actually seen, you know how we see it? Because in fire, when the difference, I saw this in Chassidut, guys, today. There's a mimer of the 5th Chabad Rebbe that discusses that the difference between fire and light, right? I always think they're synonymous. Fire and light are the same. No, when you burn a bonfire and you just have wood without oil in the fire, it's a different type of fire. You don't have that brightness, the bright white. It's much darker. So lighting the menorah with oil over here is going to give you more actual light and more light to see, physical light, than a bonfire that's way larger than the menorah. Because with the bonfire, you're missing the oil aspect of the flame, and that's the brightness. That's what gives the light of it. It's only the fire without the light. So fire has 2 colors, and in Chassidut we actually talk about 5 colors of the flame. The blue, the black, and they each mean something else in your soul, and that's for another class. But for today, we're going to talk about the 2 general colors of the flame. There's the dark part of the flame in the middle, which you have even if you burn wood, which is what happens when you consume the actual wood or the flame or the thing that's being consumed. And then we have the brightness around the darker part of the flame, which only happens if you're consuming oil or wax, which is oil, right? And that potential for that brightness is found already in the oil. So the potential for the flame that we light up is in the oil, inside every one of us, in our infinity. And that's the oil that no matter how many Greek soldiers come and take off the seal of every single one, they're never going to be able to, there's always going to be oil, a jug of oil, because it's infinite. It's 8. It comes from oil. Oil is a connection to infinity. The oil is that piece of our soul that is greater than any natural force of destruction. And every single Jew has it inside of them. Even Bob Dylan, when he temporarily baptized, what we spoke about him earlier, to whatever he baptized to, whichever faith, Catholicism, or he was like a whatever, born again something. And so even then the potential for the flame was there. Even then the oil was there with the potential for the fire that comes in the oil, which is crazy. The difference, I never thought about the difference between fire and oil. And that's really an entire class in it to itself of why we need the 3 parts of a flame. We'll get to it soon. I'm digressing. Okay, so now we summarize why the miracle, the greatest miracle, why the Chachamim focus mostly on the finding that oil, because that's what Chanukah represents, finding that that dimension that's connected to the greatness, to infinity, and why lighting the menorah for 8 days and the oil lasting for 8 days represents the miracle of light overpowering darkness, right? Okay, now we're going back to Hillel and Shammai. Let me look at my notes. They're not working. Okay.
It is, man.
So did I leave any loose ends? Anyone have any questions? So we understand why we're celebrating 8 because 8 is infinity. We understand we're setting we're fire with candles because that represents the soul, and why we're commemorating with oil because oil is that part of that jug of oil inside every person that cannot be destroyed no matter what. Okay, now comes Hillel and Shammai. So Hillel and Shammai both understood this message that the core of Chanukah is to banish darkness. That's what we're doing in Chanukah. We're banishing darkness with light. But here is where they digress. They each had different opinions on the best way to battle darkness, to banish darkness. Chanukah is about overcoming the darkness, but Shammai said, my way of battling darkness is starting with 8 and lowering it. And that I think is the best way to get rid of darkness. And Hillel said, no, I think you're wrong. I think the best way to battle darkness is by starting with 1 candle and going up to 8. Obviously, they weren't just talking about lighting the menorah. When they spoke about this, they had really deep ideas of what it means to battle darkness and spirituality. So let's go to what it means spiritually when you start with the most and go with the little. So we'll talk about Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were colleagues in the times of the Mishnah. And they came from a different, it says that Hillel and Shammai were from 2 different sides of the tree of life, of the spheros. Hillel came from Chesed, from the side of Chesed, and Shammai's source of his neshama came from the side of Gevurah. Now, this affected all of their teachings. That's why Shammai, in most of Shammai's rulings, he's strict because Gevurah, it comes from judgment and more strictness and more and from that side. And Hillel was much more lenient in things because his soul came from the branch of Chesed, and they each came to complement the world. And now most of our rulings go according to Hillel, but when Mashiach comes, it actually says that we light the menorah now like Hillel from 1 to more, from starting from 1 and increasing. Well, when Mashiach comes, we're actually going to light like Hillel and like Shammai. Somehow we're going to light 1 menorah and it's going to be like Hillel and like Shammai, or 2 menorahs. I don't know. We're going to light like both of them. So let's talk about what their psychological approach was. So knowing that Shammai comes from the level of Gevurah, Shammai's approach was this: that when you battle darkness, you're going to need the first day. For example, if somebody's battling an addiction or they're in depression, the first day of battling the darkness, you're going to need the most light because you have the most darkness. So if you're battling darkness today, and he took it from the Parei Chag. Why did the Parei Chag on Sukkot? Why do we have eight bulls, and then 7 bulls, and 6 bulls? Because the Parei Chag, it says, represents the 70 nations. And in total, there were 70 bulls, and they represent the 70 nations. And we're trying to battle the darkness from the 70 nations that surround us. And the way we do that is by detracting their light. By every day going less, we're taking away, we're weakening their power. We're uprooting it. So if we have an issue, if you go to a therapist and you have a deep trauma or a depression or some struggle with addiction or something dark in your life, the first day you're going to have to uproot it from its core. You're going to have to go down and you're going to need the most work. It's going to take the most work in therapy. You're going to be there for hours and telling your history and working on the issue. And it's going to take a long time. But over time, you're going to need less and less light to battle the darkness, right? You're going to detract. You're going to weaken the darkness. You're going to be fighting the darkness day 1 with all of your light, all of your power. The next day, there's going to be a little bit less darkness, so you don't need as much koach. And the next day, you decrease the darkness a little bit more until the last day, the darkness is so little, you only need 1 candle. So that's Shammai's approach. It's brilliant. This and psychology, I call this Freudian psychology, right? When you want to get to the root of an issue. So Freudian psychology is when you go to the root of something. You have to work really hard in the beginning to get to the root of the issue and uproot the darkness, uproot the trauma, uproot this issue that you're having from its root. And that takes the most strength on the first day. And that is why he says that Keneged Yamim HaNichnasim, the first reason of Shammai was, the first Tana said, that Shammai says, light the first day because of how many days you have left, right? You have the most darkness coming your way, light the most candles now. It makes sense. Now what's Hillel's approach?
To add light every day.
So why does Hillel think it? So Hillel says you have a darkness in your life, you have a trauma, you have an addiction, you have depression. You can't battle it. You can't overpower it. All that darkness. Shammai came from a very Gevurah, although it seems like the left side is more negative. It's in fact comes from a much more powerful place. That's why where Yitzchak and Asa came from Gevurah. Gevurah has a lot of power. Shammai had a lot of power in him. And he said, and Hillel said, Shammai, you're right. You might be right? That's amazing, right? Because the best way to take care of an issue psychologically in therapy is to get to the root of it, to figure out where in my childhood it came from, where in this life, in my last life, in my Holocaust thing, right? My mother, my grandmother, really, for real. I know I have Holocaust post trauma, right? Figure it out from its root. And uproot the issue from its root so that it doesn't keep coming back. What happens if you don't uproot an issue from its a weed? If you don't take out the root of it, it keeps growing back. So you're going to deal with this issue in therapy. You're going to, for one day, you don't get to the root of it. It's going to keep coming up in your life. You have to get it from its root. And Hillel said, Shama, you're right. You're right. But you know what happens to people who go to therapy and try to figure out the root of their problem? They stay in therapy forever and they never get rid of the problem. And so he says, we don't have time for that. There is so much darkness now in Golas, Shammai. There's so much darkness now. If we start going to the root of the darkness, we're going to be in a downward spiral we're never going to get out of. And to me, the mashal for that I think of is when you try to battle the anti-Semitism online, it is never ending. If you try to answer every person by showing them the truth and showing them the light and answering them, you are going to be battling that darkness till the end of darkness days, till Mashiach comes. Mashiach will come, right? There's no way you're going to get, there's no downward spiral. When you go to an issue, the root of it, my mother, my grandmother, and you go to it, you're going to sit in therapy for months and months and months. We don't have time for that, Hillel says. Shammai, we ain't got time for that. That's my life. Hillel says, Shammai, we're in so much darkness, we don't have time, although that is the better way to get rid of a weed, to get to its roots, go all the way down to the source and figure out the problem and uproot it with the most light the first day. We don't have time for that, Hillel says. Hillel is like the new therapist. Freud, this was the Freudian, the only way psychology, but people were in therapy for years, and then they dealt with like one tiny issue, and then it kept right, and they didn't fully uproot it because it takes years. So yes, it's a valid approach to therapy, for it works, but it takes a long time and a lot of koach that we don't have in Gullus, Hillel says. What do we need in Gullus? And the therapy movement in the 1990s moved into something called solution-focused therapy, SFT. If that's someone who's a therapist, give me information because I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying what I read online and what I know from my own therapy, the situation, from my own talk. But solution-focused therapy says we don't got time for Freudian stuff. We don't want my patient sitting in therapy for 3 years and then figuring out with their mother and then not talking to their mother until they figure out how to heal. Let's get to figuring out how we can fix this issue. What is your issue right now? How can we make your life better? How can we take out the darkness from today? That's what Hillel said. So solution-focused therapy is like NLP, CBT. CBT is what's your belief, right? So fine, your mother, you're this, that, fine, great. Now, what is your belief about yourself? I'm not lovable because of your mother. What's your primary belief, CBT says, right? CBT is Chabad, right? Chachma bina das, literally. So Chachma, what is the thought that's making you feel this way? That you're not lovable, that you're not worthy enough unless you please everybody? Okay, let's work, let's challenge that belief. Is it true that I'm not worthy if I don't please everybody? I'm just saying that because that's a general core belief that most people have, most women have. That's why I'm using that one. That, unless I make everyone happy, unless I'm a people pleaser, unless I do the right thing, then I'm not worthy of love, right? So let me question that. Is that true? Do I love other people if they're not pleasing me? Yes. So I question that belief, and then that affects my, I don't know what the T is, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the behavioral, affects my behavior. I'll start to tell myself and question that belief until I'm better. That works much more effectively and faster and more and adds much more light into my life than going back to the root of why I'm not unworthy of love and what my parents did and what their parents did to make them that way and their parents did and made them that way, right? It's much more solution focused. NLP, EFT, EMDR, rapid eye movement, all those things focus on rewiring your brain so that you don't get stuck in the darkness anymore. Yes, we have darkness. Yes, it's deeply rooted. Yes, it's generational trauma. That's what I was looking for. Yes, it's generational trauma, but we don't have time to get rid of the generational trauma. But we do have time is to rewire your brain pattern so that now you have and you can be the one that breaks the generational trauma. And I keep seeing so much on Instagram, so many therapists talking about us, our generation, being the one that breaks the generational trauma. This generation is the one that breaks that pattern because we have the words, we have the language, we have the power of the internet to do good things, to teach us how to break the generational trauma by apologizing to our children. No one until this generation apologized to their children. Not nobody, I'm saying a blanket statement, but it was very rare to apologize to your children. This generation is the first one, and that is what probably the number one thing that breaks the generational trauma, that breaks that pattern of trauma. When a parent can look at their child and say, I did that wrong, and even if they say, I wish I had done this differently, the healing of those words, I heard a Chabad Rebbetzin and a bring in once share these words that one time her mother said to her, if I knew then, she wasn't able to apologize still because she's from another generation, but she said she made a lot of mistakes like we all do. But she once said, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have done things differently. And she said that was 10 years of therapy for her right there. For this daughter who's a grown grandmother herself. This daughter is a shlucha who's married children. And for her, that was 10 years of therapy. So being able to own to not be so to work with our shame. And it's not shameful to say you did something wrong. It's not shameful to say you made a mistake. To say, I wish I'd done things differently. I'm sorry. Let me make space for making space for sadness and pain instead of just trying to ignore it and shove it away and say, no, let's just be happy all the time. Admitting when there's a problem, apologizing to our spouse in front of our children. All those things those things are the ones, anyways, it's totally an off-topic thing. But why am I even talking about this? Generational trauma, because that is the way that we break generational trauma. And we're talking about, we don't have to get to the root of the generational trauma and uproot it from its source and go back to our mother and get an apology from our mother. We can do it on our own. We don't need our parents' apology. We could on our own change the patterns, the way we think, through all different types of solution-focused therapy. And my favorite therapy, my therapist, my last therapist, she practiced something, I forget what the word for it, someone write in the comments if you know, it was a mix. She called it a mixed approach. She had a much better word than mixed, but she called it a combination approach it was a combination between talking about the root of the issue a little bit and then going to creating new patterns, new tools to how we're going to work through this, what darkness in your life right now. How do we get rid of it? So now we're getting to Hillel. So Hillel says to Shammai, we don't got time for that, to uproot the generational trauma. We're going to be sitting in the darkness forever. If we start combating every single anti-Semite online and answering them and giving them, even if we come with them with great answers and with beautiful messages, it's going to be endless. We're never going to see the light. What can we do instead? Hillel says, you have a problem today, light one candle. All you can do, solution-focused therapy. Hillel said, you have so much darkness in your light. You can't attack all that darkness. What's the solution you could do? What could you do to combat? You're drowning in darkness. Scott, we all have faced darkness in our lives. And darkness has no name, right? In the Parsha, we said darkness doesn't have a name. That's what the essence of darkness is. It's not real. It has no substance. It's just there in the absence of light. So darkness comes to us in so many ways, in physical suffering, some of us in struggles in loneliness, in struggles in shalom bayis, in parnasa, in tragedies in the family, in health issues, in self-esteem, in emotional and depression, in mental illness, in struggles with children, with chinuch. There's every single type of darkness that we have. Everyone has many types of darkness. People face struggles, and in their darkness, what is the one thing you can do when you're drowning in darkness? You feel like there's no hope for light tomorrow. We don't have the energy to now combat all the darkness on light. 8 branches of the menorah. I could barely get out of bed, and I'm going to use my own example, my own self. When I was stuck in depression and I couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't get out of bed for like anything. At that point, Hillel said, when you're swimming in darkness and you're drowning in depression or whatever your darkness is, don't think about how you're going to get to the end of it. Don't think about the end of uprooting. Just think about what's one positive thing you can do now to add more light to your situation, to add more light now. Just light one candle, one doable step. And if that doesn't seem doable, if you think about a step, then make it even smaller. Think about the tiniest step you can do in the small direction. Instead of thinking about my issue and what the issue is and what the source is of the issue and how I'm going to fix it and how I'm going to get out of it. Don't think about that. Just think about one step. And of course, I'm going to say the story of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. If I said it already, I apologize. Of the college students who wrote to the Rebbe that she has no friends because she is so selfish and she can't stop being selfish. She just thinks about herself only and no one likes her. And so the Rebbe, she thought the Rebbe was going to tell her, read this book, read Chavos Lubavos, read about your midos. Talk to this rabbi. You know what the Rebbe said to her? It's mind-blowing. He said to her, tomorrow when you're at cafeteria in college, when you're at the cafeteria and you go get yourself a spoon, get a second spoon for someone else at the table. That was it. And she was like, seriously? And they're like, if the Rebbe said to do it, you're going to do it. So she did it. That was it. He didn't say what the next step was. He didn't even say what step 2 was. So the next day at the cafeteria, she says that she went and she did what the Rebbe said. She got a second spoon. She said, who wants a spoon? And she was like, oh, I took one step out of my selfishness, one step out of my dark self-obsession. And it felt so good. I could do it again tomorrow. And eventually she's like, giving feels good. I could do this. I'm not like, it doesn't have to be like I'm from today to tomorrow. I'm a new person. Now I'm a selfless person. It's one step of light, and climbing out that one step leads to the next step, to the next candle, and keep adding a candle until suddenly your whole menorah is lit and the darkness is banished by itself. You don't even talk about the darkness. Don't talk about the selfishness. Don't even address it. Don't work about your midos. Just do one action. It's about the action. The oil is about the action. The whole essence of why we have to light the Chanukah with oil. We can't light a bonfire of wood. It has to be oil. And the Chassidut, oil is the mitzvahs that pack the actual Torah mitzvahs, doing a mitzvah that binds together the flame, which is our soul, and the wood, which is our body. And if you light this for me, or pass me the flamer, the lighter. Okay, we have a lighter here. Now, when you light a candle, you'll see that and if you look at any candle in your menorah, you're going to see that the candle is always moving.
You didn't like the lighting.
I did. See a lit. You have to burn some wax for it to stick. Okay, that was the best message, guys. So the message is that we have these two opposites in our bodies. We have our flame, which is godly, which is yearning to connect to Hashem, to be one, to be transcendent, to unite with God, to be godly and infinite. We have our wick, which is our physical body, which wants to be materialistic and enjoy life and do all the things that feel good and eat donuts, right? And go shop and have nice things. And how do these things stick together? Because they're two opposites. And the movement that we see on the flame, even without wind, is never still. And the reason it's never still is because the flame is trying to go up and the wick is trying to go down. And the tension between those two is the vacillation. That's why it's always moving, because there's a constant opposites. There's a constant tug of war, a ratzoi and shuv in Hasidic terms. And that's what's happening. And because the candle is a mirror of our own body and our own soul, the candle is our neshama constantly yearning to transcend, to do Torah, to be one with God, to kalos and nefesh, to daven. And our body, which is more a louder voice, is constantly saying, "No, I want to stay in bed. I want to just do things. I feel good. I'm lazy, right?" And that vacillation between the two is why there's a tug of war, a fight between the two of them. They're always moving. And what allows these two opposites to fuse? Rather, this is a total another chassidut, the deepest chassidut ever. That what keeps them together, they can only stay together if they have oil to burn or wax to burn. Well, they're going to use oil because wax is really oil, so we're going to call it oil. So the only way that the wick and the flame could stay together, right? Because in this, until there was wax burning, the flame and the wick couldn't connect. So the only way to have this, the constant dance, that constant pull, the reason that we sometimes feel like we shuckle more and when we're hearing Torah, when we're singing, is because that's when our soul is activated. Our flame is activated more. So suddenly our flame is like, get me out of here. I don't want to be so stuck in this body. I want to be higher. I want to be transcendent. And that's why we're shuckling when we're spiritual, because that's the flame yearning. And sometimes there's a big disconnect. Sometimes in our lives, we feel this emptiness in our life. We feel empty. We feel when we try to fill it with food and nothing fills. We try to fill it with shopping and it's not working. That emptiness is because there's too big of a disconnect between our flame and our wick, because they're two opposites. And how do we have less of a disconnect? Only when the flame and the wick have enough oil to burn. When they have enough oil to burn, then they can stay connected to each other. When we don't have oil, the oil and physically, if there's no oil to burn, the flame literally couldn't light now. We couldn't light it because we have to first heat up the wax and melt it, then it could light, and melt it into oil. When there's no oil, there was no oil yet. Then it can't light. Oil in our life is the Torah mitzvos. Only when there's mitzvos, actual doing a deed, doing light, doing an act of light, that's when we confuse the two. When we're doing enough mitzvos, when we're learning enough Torah, then our oil, our body, and our soul can blend together, can melt, and could coexist. They can coexist, and they could have something to burn. And this is a mimer that I didn't even get through half of yet. So this is way deeper than what I'm saying, and I'm simplifying this concept very short. And the reason why is it that way, and the mitzvahs come from a level higher than the soul, because the soul still has a feeling of self. The mitzvahs come from total bittul, total humility, total oneness of God, total infinity. So when we connect to the mitzvahs, we're connecting to something so infinite, we're so battle, we have no sense of self, then the two can unite, right? When there's tension between me and you, me and another person, it's because my ego's there. If there's humility, if something great happens, when Israel is in a conflict about these silly things like politics, and then suddenly they have bittul because something so much more, when a war happens and people are killed, why does suddenly they can coexist? Because suddenly they're battle, suddenly they're humbled, because something way greater than the small thing. They're humbled to even think about that argument. When there's humility, when there's bittul, and bittul humility, and self-nullification, and the word I'm looking for, I forget, selflessness, then suddenly I can be one with you and I'm selfless. But the clashing happens when I'm me, I'm so strong in my opinion, you're so strong in your opinion, and myself is so strong. But when myself melts away, when I do a mitzvah, myself melts away because I'm uniting with the infinite. And so if I'm feeling this disconnect in my life, this emptiness, probably what I need is to do more Torah mitzvahs, and specifically the act of doing a mitzvah, to make ourselves selfless, to make ourselves battle, and doing a mitzvah. Suddenly I'll feel that tension less. I'll feel that disconnect less between my body and my soul. This was a long tangent. And someone remind me how we got to this. Anyone? I don't remember. Okay. So we got to this because we were saying that Hillel and Shammai says, light one candle, do one mitzvah, do one positive action in the step of climbing out of the darkness that you're stuck in. Do one tiny thing, right? So if you're in darkness and you're depressed, tomorrow I have a friend who is on my Chabad, I have a woman, another Chabad shlucha, who was depressed, and I remember, I'm saying without names, she said that my goal is to be dressed before this is a Chabad shlucha. My goal for this month is to try to be dressed before my kids come home from school at 4 p.m. That was it. That's lighting one candle. She's not like, I'm going to cure depression, I'm going to go get therapy, I'm going to do meditation and yoga. That's not going to happen, right? What could happen is that tomorrow I'll try my best to be dressed before 4 p.m. That's lighting one candle. And then you do that for a few days, and then you're ready to light the next candle. And then you're like, today I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to go out of the house before my kids come home on my porch and get fresh air. Today I'm going to call a friend. Whatever it is, think of one step to climb out of the darkness. Don't think about how I'm going to finish battling it, how I'm going to answer every person. Think about one light thing you can do. So when you're overwhelmed by darkness in the world now, when you're overwhelmed by anti-Semitism from the outside world, instead of thinking, how am I going to conquer and I think about this every single day. Every day when I open my phone, I think about this panic of how are we, the tiny Jewish nation, going to battle the overwhelming darkness of anti-Semitism from every corner of the world, especially in America. And I get overwhelmed and I feel helpless and I feel defeated. And the reminder of Hanukkah now is so much more important than any other time. That Hillel says, don't think about battling darkness. Darkness isn't even real. All you need to do is light one candle. Think about one candle you can light, and so much darkness will be dissipated on its own. And we see this every time the Jewish nation does light. Suddenly we feel the darkness just go away. All I have to do is shut off my phone, look at the right social media accounts that show the light of Am Yisrael, that show how beautiful our nation is. Go to a Hanukkah lighting, do one mitzvah for another person. Send a message to care about somebody who needs a message from me. Send something, just say hi to somebody and give a warming, loving smile to somebody that you don't know. Buy something when you're buying something for yourself, buy an extra one for a wife of a chayal or a chayal that you see. Do one light. You'll feel your soul lift and soar with light. Way more light than you could have had by any amount of counter anti-Semitism online, by any amount of accounts. So we have to ignore the darkness and realize it doesn't have any real existence, and be like Hillel and light one candle, one tiny act of light, do one more act of light, then the next day add another act of light, another act of light, and suddenly your whole entire menorah is lit and the darkness is vanished. The darkness runs away from the light. It says when there's light, darkness runs away. You don't have to actually actively push it away. It disappears. When Am Yisrael, and this is one of the biggest teachings of the Rebbe, whenever there was anti-Semitism, he said, you're trying to answer them? Walk outside, be proud to be a Jew, shine your light as Am Yisrael. Proudly walk outside, scream Am Yisrael Chai, light your menorahs as bright as you can, show how you dress as a Jew, show how you act as a Jew, show how a Jew acts with kindness, with Ahavas Yisrael, continue being a light unto the nations, and the anti-Semitism will run away. When we're proud of who we are, when we shine our light, the darkness will have no one to talk to. The darkness will have nowhere to go because it's so light. There's no darkness left. There's no room for darkness. So only when we can walk outside, shine our light as proud as possible, when every single Jew can do this. And shout out to my brother-in-law, Herschel, who's Chabad Shliach. Every time he sees Jews anywhere, in Israel, in America, he takes a selfie with them and he screams, everyone, 1, 2, 3, Am Yisrael Chai. Jewish, secular. You know what that does to the Jewish soul for everyone around? So you see an anti-Semitic rally, don't hang signs back and say anything back. Stand in front of the rally like Chabad rabbis have been doing, and do a mitzvah. Put on tefillin right in front of the rally. There's nowhere. The darkness is afraid of the light. The darkness runs away. They're like, what now, right? Light a menorah. Light a giant menorah. Do a mitzvah. Do tefillin. Be kind. Show your kindness. Do Ahavas Yisrael with if there's Jews in that rally, be kind to them. Light tefillin with them. You saw the video of the Chabad boys putting tefillin on with Santa Claus, right? That is it. Don't engage with the darkness in any way. Don't engage with darkness. Only shine your light even brighter. Find the darkness, go out to the darkness, and shine your light as bright as you can by wearing your Jewish pride, by being proud of your Kedusha. And I'm going to leave you with one more message. So Hillel says, so just summarize, Shammai says, battle the darkness from its root. And we say when Mashiach comes, fine, we'll have more koach, we'll have much more power in our soul. We can battle the darkness from its root. But now, until Mashiach comes, Hillel says we can't battle all the darkness from its root. Start with one candle. Just start with adding one light to overcome the darkness until suddenly all the darkness is vanished. And I'm going to leave you with one takeaway from this. Daniela, film the takeaway. The one takeaway from all of this, I need this to remember, because this is the most important part. Is the takeaway? Is the most important part is what you can do from this. Now we learned that the whole battle of the Greeks against us, the whole battle of Hanukkah was against the Kedusha aspect of Torah mitzvos. So what we can do to counter what the Greeks were trying to do is add more Kedusha in our lives. Don't just keep Torah mitzvos, keep it with Kedusha. And the way we do that is by remembering to talk about Hashem as much as possible. When we're doing a mitzvah, when you're doing something kind, bring Hashem into the conversation with your friends, with your spouse, with yourself. Talk about Hashem. Bring the aspect of the eight, of the infinity, into everything that you do to do the opposite of what the Greeks were trying to eradicate. That flame of everything, the Torah secha, the mitzvah secha. Talk about Hashem. Something happens, say, oh, this is from Hashem. Hashem wants this to happen. Something doesn't work out, say, oh, I guess Hashem didn't want it to happen. It will make your life more bright. It will make everyone's life more bright, and will bring back the Kedusha, and it will literally answer all of what the Greeks tried to do to us, to get rid of that Kedusha. Bring godliness in your life as much as possible. Talk about God, connect to Hashem, and bring the aspect of godliness into your life. Happy Hanukkah. Light up the world with your light.
Chabad Rebbetzin, let's see your earrings. Show me the hat. Show me the other earring.
There we go.
Oh,
The ensemble.
I'm jealous.
I said I'm on the road to trying to be the coolest Chabad Rebbetzin ever.
You're already there.
I don't have the nails this year. Next year we'll have the nails. I'll have.
No,
All right,
no.
Kiki, coolest Chabad Rebbetzin ever. My Rebbetzin cooler than yours. Just saying.
It's great.
Love it. Earrings. I'm so jealous of all the sweat.
Wait, a bracelet.
I really need it.
I will give you all of it,
Can I
Danielle.
have it?
I'll give you a bracelet.
Put your arm.
This I'll order. I'm gonna order for Danielle.
I have you for me.
How long was that? That was very long.
Sorry, I'm so embarrassed that I was late.
Tell
Sorry,
me,
guys.
because I need to know. Because I'm pissed at her now. Tell me.
Next time
Oh, she
call
came for
me.
Chabad. What do we call you? Danielle, you told me you're coming.
Late.
Tell
Sorry,
me,
guys.
because I need to know. Because I'm pissed at her now. Tell me.
Next time
Oh, she
call
came for
me.
Chabad. What do we call you? Danielle, you told me you're coming. Yeah, we're just going to the fire. Deco. Guys, Deco tonight at 6. Music, Maccabees.
Shelly, pick it up. It's on the floor.
What do you think? What do you find?
Why should I call you? What?
It's so cool to see you.
I really want to come back. Yeah, where's your Michelle, I won't do it so long. You can leave it. You can leave earlier.
Oh, that's true.
Bye, everybody. Come to the Wait, guys, we need to do a picture.
Uh-oh, we have 4 minutes. We need to get the
Really?
Really? What are you gonna do? I know. Here, I'll take it.
Happy Hanukkah. I forgot about the shear almost. I was like,
I remember part of it from last
you
week.
did? We did a little sound like right?
And that's the story about the girl.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I love that story.
I
Who has an iPhone?
do, here. Yes.
Thank you.
Come, Michelle.
Where we go?
I'll copy you in. You look so pretty.
Here we go. All right. Where's you? Did you get the end people too?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys so much.
It was nice to meet all of you.
Take my little teeth. Why do you like for shower? My little teeth.
What does it look like?
Maybe it's your bag.
Oh my gosh, the thing didn't end.
So